Black waitress fired for helping orphan kids. What happens next will leave you speechless. What if one simple act of kindness could change everything you thought you knew about right and wrong? Ruby Washington had been serving coffee and warm meals at Millie's Diner for 15 years, her gentle smile greeting every customer who walked through those worn wooden doors. She knew every regular by name, remembered how they liked their eggs, and always had a kind word for anyone having a tough day. But on that chilly Tuesday morning in October, when she spotted 3 small faces pressed against the frosted window, their breath creating little clouds on the glass as they watched people eat inside, Ruby's heart did something it had never done before. Without thinking twice, she grabbed 3 plates from the kitchen and filled them with eggs, bacon, and toast. She didn't know those children would change her life forever. She certainly never imagined that helping them would cost her everything she'd worked for. Where are you watching from tonight? Ruby had always believed that Millie's Diner was more than just a place to grab a quick bite. Tucked between Thompson's hardware store and the old Paramount Theater on Main Street, the diner had been serving the small town of Maplewood for over 40 years. The red vinyl booths had seen countless first dates, family celebrations, and late-night conversations over apple pie. Ruby took pride in making everyone feel welcome, from the construction workers who came in before dawn to the elderly couples who shared a slice of chocolate cake every Sunday after church. The 3 children who'd been peering through the window couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. Their clothes were clean but obviously hand-me-downs, and Ruby recognized the look in their eyes, the same one she'd seen in her own mirror growing up in foster care. When she quietly slipped outside with the plates of food, the oldest child, a boy with serious dark eyes, shook his head. "We don't have any money, ma'am," he whispered, his small hand protectively holding his younger sister's shoulder. "That's all right, honey," Ruby said softly, kneeling down to their level. "Sometimes people just need a good meal. I'm Ruby. What are your names?" The girl whispered that she was Emma, and the boy said he was Marcus. The third child, barely more than a toddler, just smiled and reached for a piece of bacon. For the next week, the children appeared every morning around 7:30, just before the breakfast rush. Ruby would quietly set aside 3 plates and meet them by the side door. They never asked for anything, never complained, and always said thank you with voices barely above a whisper. Ruby learned they were staying at St. Catherine's Children's Home across town and walking the 2 miles to school every day. But on Friday morning, Mr. Henderson, the diner's owner, arrived early to check inventory. Through the kitchen window, he watched Ruby hand plates of food to the children. His face darkened as he realized what had been happening. Ruby's secret acts of kindness were about to be discovered, and she had no idea what was coming. "Ruby, my office. Now." Mr. Henderson's voice cut through the morning bustle like a knife. Ruby's hands trembled as she untied her apron, her heart sinking as she noticed the children's empty plates still sitting by the back door. She'd been so careful, so quiet, but somehow he'd found out. 15 years, Ruby. 15 years I've trusted you with this place," Henderson said, his face flushed with anger. "And you've been stealing food. Giving away my profits to some street kids. Do you have any idea what this could do to my business? What if other people expect free handouts?" Ruby straightened her shoulders, finding strength in memories of her own hungry childhood nights. "They're not street kids, Mr. Henderson. They're children from St. Catherine's Home, and they were hungry. I've never seen them eat anywhere else." Her voice was steady, though her heart was racing. "I was going to pay for the food myself. I couldn't let them go hungry." Henderson's expression softened for just a moment, but then his business instincts took over. "That's not how this works, Ruby. I can't have employees giving away food without permission. What kind of precedent does that set?" He paused, looking genuinely pained by what he was about to say. "You're fired, effective immediately." The words hit Ruby like a physical blow. 15 years of early mornings, double shifts during holidays, birthday cakes shared with the staff. All of it ending because she'd fed 3 hungry children. As she cleaned out her small locker, her co-worker Maria whispered, "Everyone knows what kind of person you are, Ruby. This isn't right." Walking to her car, Ruby saw Marcus, Emma, and little Joey waiting by their usual spot. Their faces lit up when they saw her, but then confusion clouded their expressions as she approached without any food. "Miss Ruby," Emma asked quietly, "are you okay? You look sad. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up." Ruby knelt down and gently explained that she wouldn't be able to bring them breakfast anymore. Marcus nodded solemnly, as if he'd expected this day to come. "Thank you for taking care of us," he said simply. Ruby drove home that afternoon wondering how 3 small children had just taught her more about grace than most adults ever would. The next few weeks were the hardest Ruby had faced in years. Without her steady paycheck from the diner, bills began piling up on her kitchen table. She'd applied to every restaurant in town, but word had spread quickly about why she'd been let go. Some potential employers saw her as a liability, someone who might give away their food too. Others simply couldn't afford to hire anyone new. Ruby found herself rationing her own groceries, understanding more than ever what those children had felt like looking through that window. What kept her awake at night wasn't just worry about her own future, though. She couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, Emma, and Joey. Were they still walking those 2 miles to school on empty stomachs? Were they still standing outside other restaurants, hoping someone would notice? The questions gnawed at her, especially when she drove past St. Catherine's Children's Home and saw the run-down building with its peeling paint and overgrown yard. One Thursday morning, Ruby made a decision that surprised even herself. She used part of her last unemployment check to buy groceries and drove to St. Catherine's. The director, Mrs. Patterson, was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who seemed genuinely grateful for visitors. "Those 3 you mentioned," she said when Ruby asked about them, "they're good kids, but they're having a tough time. Marcus feels responsible for his younger siblings. They're not actually related, but they came here together from the same foster situation. He's been talking about getting a job to help with expenses." Ruby's heart broke imagining 8-year-old Marcus trying to shoulder such grown-up worries. "What if I volunteered to help with breakfast preparation?" she asked. "I have experience with commercial cooking, and I'm between jobs right now." Mrs. Patterson's face brightened for the first time during their conversation. "We can't pay much, actually, we can't pay anything, but we desperately need help. Our kitchen staff quit last month, and I've been trying to manage meals for 23 children by myself. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." As Ruby walked through the children's home that afternoon, seeing the worn furniture and hearing the echoes of young voices in the hallways, she felt something she hadn't experienced since losing her job, a sense of purpose. Maybe getting fired from the diner hadn't been the end of her story. Maybe it had been the beginning of something she was truly meant to do. The question was whether she had the courage to start completely over at 54 years old. Ruby threw herself into volunteer work at St. Catherine's with an energy that surprised everyone, including herself. Within 2 weeks, she'd reorganized the entire kitchen, created a meal planning system that stretched their limited budget further than anyone thought possible, and most importantly, she'd transformed breakfast from a hurried, often skipped meal into the highlight of every child's morning. Marcus, Emma, and Joey couldn't believe their eyes when they first saw Miss Ruby in the St. Catherine's kitchen, wearing a cheerful yellow apron and humming while she flipped pancakes. "You came here for us," Emma whispered, throwing her small arms around Ruby's waist. But Ruby knew the truth. She'd come here for herself just as much as for them. Word of Ruby's transformation of the children's home kitchen began to spread throughout Maplewood. Parents whose children went to school with the St. Catherine's kids started hearing stories about the amazing breakfast program. Local church groups began donating ingredients after hearing about Ruby's creative ways of making nutritious meals on almost no budget. Even the local newspaper ran a small story about the former diner waitress who'd found her true calling feeding children who needed it most. The story reached Millie's Diner on a busy Saturday morning when regular customer Tom Mitchell brought in the newspaper and read the article aloud to the breakfast crowd. The diner went unusually quiet as people absorbed the story of Ruby's firing and her subsequent volunteer work. Maria, who was serving Tom's table, felt tears in her eyes as she listened. That afternoon, something unprecedented happened. Mr. Henderson received a phone call from the mayor's office, followed by calls from 3 city council members, the pastor of First Baptist Church, and finally, his own mother. By evening, A steady stream of customers had come by, not to eat, but to express their feelings about what had happened to Ruby Washington. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Henderson sat in his empty diner that night, surrounded by the silence of a business that had fed his family for 2 decades. He thought about Ruby's 15 years of faithful service, about the 3 hungry children, and about what kind of man he wanted to be remembered as. The next morning, he would have to make a choice that would define not just his business, but his character. The question was whether it was too late to make things right. Monday morning arrived with an unusual sight. Mr. Henderson's pickup truck parked outside St. Catherine's Children's Home before sunrise. Ruby was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard his familiar voice talking to Mrs. Patterson in the hallway. Her hands stilled over the mixing bowl as she heard him say, "I need to speak with Ruby Washington, please. I've got some things I need to make right." When Henderson appeared in the kitchen doorway, his usual stern expression had been replaced by something Ruby had never seen in 15 years, humility. "Ruby," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've been doing some thinking. A lot of thinking." He looked around at the cheerful kitchen, at the children's artwork taped to the walls, at the carefully organized shelves where Ruby had made every donated ingredient count. "I was wrong," he continued, the words seeming to surprise him as much as they surprised Ruby. "You did what was right, and I punished you for it. This past month, watching what you've built here, seeing how the whole town has rallied around these kids because of your example, I realize I lost more than an employee. I lost someone who understood what Millie's Diner was really supposed to be about." Ruby set down her mixing spoon and really looked at her former boss. "Mr. Henderson, Please, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I want to offer you a partnership. Not just your job back, but a real partnership. We'll call it Millie's Community Kitchen. Half traditional diner, half community outreach program. Every morning, we'll provide free breakfast for any child who needs it, and every afternoon, we'll deliver meals to the elderly folks who can't get out. The whole town wants to be part of this, Ruby. But it can't happen without you." Ruby felt tears streaming down her face as Marcus, Emma, and Joey ran into the kitchen, their faces bright with excitement about something they'd overheard. "Miss Ruby, does this mean you can cook for everyone now?" Emma asked, her small hand slipping into Ruby's. 6 months later, Millie's Community Kitchen had become the heart of Maplewood in ways the old diner never had been. Ruby arrived each morning to find volunteers organizing donations, high school students earning community service credits by helping serve meals, and the mayor's wife leading a reading program in the corner booth every Tuesday afternoon. As Ruby watched Henderson teach Marcus how to calculate inventory while Emma helped sort silverware, she realized that sometimes losing everything is just life's way of making room for something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of kindness, community, and second chances.